Okay, today is on treasure hunt is all about coins. Coins mostly in the time of Christ, but before that, just coins. Where did they come from? And we need to move it a little bit. And let me get this going. Okay, that's me. Today I start off with the scripture before we go looking up coins and going on a biblical treasure hunt. It's always important that what the Bible says about treasure and treasure hunting. And I found this that will fit today very appropriately. Matthew 13. Again, the kingdom of heaven. It's a parable. Jesus is talking. And so a parable is something that how Jesus taught. It was his kind of teaching, that he would use earthly things to teach a heavenly concept. And so that's what's going on here. And he says, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man is found, he hides. And for joy therefore goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. The word treasure in the Greek is the same one as last week. And it means the place where precious things are hidden, stored up, laid up. We looked at about where our heart is. Just wherever our treasure is, that's where our heart is. And that was last week. But here's the explanation of this. And I thought about it the many times in the Bible. Do you remember the parable about the guy, the boss, that he had 3 servants and he was going to go away and he left one guy this money, and this guy, and said, go invest, do what you want to it, and be a good steward when I come back. And the first one doubled it, and the second one doubled it. And what did the third one do? He buried it. There's a lot of people in the Bible that bury their coins and bury their treasures. And so Jesus, and when I get to I'll just tell you, it was a common thing that if the enemy was coming, the Roman soldiers were coming down your street, you kept your coins in the ground somewhere. If you had any money, the Romans wanted it. If you had any money, the Greeks wanted it. And so there are no banks sitting around. No banks. And so what do? Well, if you walked and could do it, you had a leather belt on and you kept it in there. But other than that, and you'll see that in a minute. So anyway, what is this talk? Here's a guy that finds out and he sees and he learns. He sees something really great, but it's not his. And says, I got to get this the right way, money-wise. And he covers it back up, and he goes and he buys the thing, and he gets it, and he's rich. It's talking about the Lord. It's talking about finding Christ. It's the greatest treasure that we can have. And it was when we were blinded one time in our life, and all of a sudden we discovered it, and we saw it could change our lives. So we said, hang on a minute. Some of us waited. Some of us knew how to be saved, but we put it off. So we buried it somewhere for a while, maybe immediately, but came back to it and took it back and said, I need to be saved. I need the Lord Jesus Christ. The greatest treasures we're going to have are not in our pocket or in our wallet. The greatest treasures of life is our salvation in Jesus Christ, the Word of God, our loved ones, people that we've shared Jesus Christ with in our lives that we've touched. We'll get into more of that later. All right, since we're dealing with coins today, I'll go ahead and spill some coins. I'd say beans, but I'll call them coins today with you. This morning when I got up, before I got to McDonald's, I go walking places. And I see what I can find, what treasures. I've been doing it for decades. I don't get it every day. This week's had to be with an umbrella sometimes. And I go walking. I look for treasures, money, coins. I don't know about you. If I see a penny, I pick it up. I don't care if it's tails or heads, good luck or bad luck. The whole point is you pick up a penny and put it in your pocket, that's good luck. Now, I got a penny. Well, it just so happens so far today, I have $1.43 I found. Yesterday, I found $1.47. Now, Oh, I knew someone had asked that. And my answer, and I do this in Christian love, brothers and sisters, it ain't any of your business. Yes, Dick Estes.
Whenever I'm out and about and I find usually pennies on the parking lot, I pick the penny up for one reason. Because it's got printed on it, "In God we trust."
Okay. Amen. But keep looking. There'll be another one. There really will. And so that's just me, and we throw it in the thing. We have a little vat, and it just goes in a tub, and it just adds up, and at the end of the year or something, we take it to the bank, and it gets to be, it's generally $300 to $600 every year. So you get a commit, yeah. Really, today the interesting was I find all sorts of coins in funny in different ways, etc. The big surprise was this: I was actually walking parked my car, and I looked off to my left out in the parking lot, and you get used to it. I know I can see coins in the dark 100 yards away. If there's a street light, I'm pretty good. I saw glistening. I parked my car and I said, I hope it's just not raindrops on gum. That you'll learn how to find stuff. I said, no, this is the room. I got out of my car. When I was through picking up the shiny stuff, it was a total of 43 pennies. Somebody had just gotten it, opened their cars. I don't want the coins. They threw them on the ground. I got to get moving here. This has nothing to do with anything. We live with coins and paper money. But before around 600 before Christ, coins did not exist. There were no coins. Instead, a weight standard existed similar to the gold standard the world used up to the 20th century. What they would have is that if you were going to buy something in the marketplace, in the agora, a few people would have scales there, and then they would have weights. And the weights would be official government weights. And what you would do is you would weigh your gold, your silver, whatever that you had. You would bring it in and weigh it off, and then you knew how much you had to spend. Or if you went shopping and you'd say, well, I need this, or I need this, or I need this, or I want to buy a cow, that you knew how much it was, you had to have that fixed amount. And so you would counterweigh everything, and the person as you're buying from it, they would say, okay, yes, I'll take that silver, and you can have this. So you can say, well, that was pretty crazy. That's mainly how it went. There was another way. They would just plain barter. I'll trade you 3 of my cows for your sheep herd or something. And they just swap possessions, etc. Now, did you know that we still barter in America? You barter. We swap off. Some of you swap off your services for someone else's services. And that's just bartering. That's a good idea. Also, we did not abandon the scale system, even in America, with weights. Think about it a minute. How about the gold rushes? They went and found gold. Where did they do? They came into town to the assayist office, and what did they do? They weighed it. And they were given cash for the gold. The gold was weighed. It had a fixed amount to it. Carol?
Silver Queen.
Yeah. Silver Queen does the same thing. We went to a currency exchange up in Clearwater Countryside Mall yesterday. I wanted to see if they had Israel currency. They did. They don't deal in any coins, but they take coins in, and they give you $3 for a pound of just a bag of coins. And they'll weigh it, and they'll give you $3. It doesn't matter what's in it. She says, but we can't sell it back to you. We go through it for anything of value, and I know we'll find good stuff. Okay, although coins were first used in Babylon and Athens as early as the 6th century, the first coins that were used in Israel were right about at 378. Who was alive then in the Bible? Malachi probably died around this year, or 377, and that was it. So the Old Testament had come to a close, and we have that 400 years of silence. Okay? The reason maybe Israel started is because the Greeks had them, and they were already rolling with coins. And so Israel actually what Israel did is they started shekels, but mostly they started the little widow mites, the little bronze coins. You'll see them in a minute. Countries would use waste stones, and I've mentioned that. And the first ones sort of look like this from the Hebrews. They just smoothed out these things, and they said this weighs 2 shekels, that's the weight. By the way, a shekel can be a weight or it can be the coin. Okay? A set of rare Hebrew Judean waste stones were found, and that's what they look like. And they engraved right on them that these, quote, are official. And so they would look at what kind of money you wanted, and they'd put down one of these weight stones and say, you can have this much coin, or you can have this much crop. You can have this bag of groceries. But you got to pay for it. But this was the counterweight. These were all found at Lachish recently. And Isaiah talked about it. And you have that. And here's what's interesting down here. Look at verse 16. This is, what have you here, and whom have you here? Let's go back to the first verse. Thus says the Lord of hosts, go get the treasurer. Go get Shebna, which is over the house, and say, what do you got here? And what's going on that you've hewed out a hollow? What he was doing, he was cheating on the weights. And the word graves there means engraves in the rock. And he says, you've been engraving, but things are hollow. You're cheating. You've drilled out stuff. And putting your finger on the weight. And he says, stop it. You're cheating. He says, but that's exactly what Israel has done. Israel calls himself my people, but they are hollow on the inside. That they needed the Lord. And so God used a crooked treasurer to show what Israel was and shared that Isaiah. And so this was how these were found, once again, a container. Here's an old scale that they found. The scales are rare. I read constantly. You just don't find the old ancient scales buried somewhere. They're just not around. But they have found a few. The Bible currency and the money of the early Bible was based entirely on the weight of gold, silver, and bronze. And we read in the Bible, iron of Goliath's spear. Goliath's spear brought a lot of wealth. I was wondering who got it. And then we also read that Absalom, that when he died, or his hair, not when he died, but when he would cut his hair every so often, it got so long that it had great value, that the weight of that was like gold. It was like a currency whenever he cut his hair. So I'm going to the barber this week. I got to get about 3 cents on the hair. But that's interesting. But it's always the weight of gold, silver, and bronze. And look at, it's still gold and silver that's our valued metals today that are constant in the world. Brass and bronze have some. And the staff of a spear, and I'm just reading the verses, it brought 600 shekels. And when he pulled his hair, for his every year's end he cut a cut, because his hair was heavy on him, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels. That weighed 200 shekels. Yeah, a lot of dandruff too, probably. These are some Babylonian weight stones. King Nebuchadnezzar. This was their, they polished it up. They were official. These got duplicated and passed around the kingdom. The Persians had weight stones, but they liked to write on their things. Look what Darius said. I'm Darius, the great king, king of kings, king of all nations, king of the earth. Then he found Christ. He found Messiah. And all things changed. The Sumerians didn't use weight stones. But they did. But they shaped them like a duck. They just like ducks. That's how it was. They put the duck heads when they started doing the early Greek coins. And I don't know why. The inscription on this one says Judah. So you see we're in Israel, but the Greeks are the ones running and minting the coins. Under Ptolemy II, do you remember Alexander? He dies, and what happens? His kingdom is divided
Into three.
4 ways. 4 ways. Ptolemy I, one of his generals, got it, and this is during his son. This is the one that had Israel and could rule over Israel. And I'm going to tell you right now that this is a shekel. This becomes a shekel. It's also called a stater. The Romans would call it that. I have one of them with me today, and it will be at the table. So let me talk the table. The 5 biblical coins that I possess, I have written up what they look like. There's a paper. I'm going to put the actual coins right after class at this table, and I will be at the table. You are welcome to come by and pick them up, and the little cases that they're in, I've written what it is and where they're from. I have one of them that dates back to when Jesus was probably in Nazareth learning to be a carpenter. It dates in that time zone.
So how much are they worth then?
How much you want to give me? It's what some of them are worth more. Well, this one's the most expensive one because it's silver. It's very, 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 very old because it dates back into that time slot. This is cool. Counterfeit coins did exist, but unlike today, they were accepted and circulated as long as it was gold and silver and it was weighted right. So my question is this: if you're just dealing in silver and gold, does it have to have your picture on it to be the same weight and to be gold? If what you have, if it's the same, and that's why they didn't care. They just put the gold down on the scale, and so they could put a lump of it. They could melt it all down if they wanted to in a big old ugly lump, and just plop it on the scale and measure it out, and that's how much you had. But it was be an expensive thing, but you couldn't counterfeit this stuff. Currencies other than metals include livestock and land. Human slaves were valued at 20 to 30 shekels. What was Jesus sold for? Yeah. Bible Israel had cities with mints. In fact, look at this. Everything that's red, they had a mint there, and they minted coins. The Greeks minted coins, but the Romans really went at it. And I will get to this in a minute. Tyre, I put a blue arrow, but it didn't show up here. Tyre merits you writing this somewhere in your notes or something. That was the big mint for all the Greeks. While these other ones were smaller, Tyre was the big one. When Herod came into power before Christ, Herod the Great, he moved everything to Jerusalem, or a lot of it to Jerusalem, and he started printing up his own coins with his picture on them. And the reason he did it, he wanted them there. He wanted them to get out into the circulation with the Jews, and that they would pay their temple tax with him and his favorite god on the pictures of the coins. And it just rankled the Jews. And it should have. And you'll see why in a minute. There are also many coins named in the Old Testament. The famous is called the gold derrick, produced by Darius the Mede, that we read about in Daniel. A mina and a talent are money terms used in the New Testament, but they refer to weights of silver rather than coins. So remember, the man gave those 3 servants, and he gave them talents, didn't he? So he didn't give them coins, but he gave them silver that weighed, that had an equal weight, and said, take this and you invest. You do the three of them. I'll be back. You invest it. What are you going to do with it? Here's the Babylonian weight stone again. If I could go back, do you see the word mina? Right there, the first word. Okay, look down there. This shows you the Babylonian weight stones. They have the smallest ones a mina to the largest ones a 3 shekel, and everything in between. The coins of one nation would be collected, melted down, and recast into coins by the conquering nation. Why would they do that? Well, recycling goes in your blank. I just put that you think recycling's new. It's not. You had new rulers in town and on thrones and everything. And so why not let's take the old coins. We've already got the gold and the silver and the bronze. There it is. It's been mined. And so they'd melt it down. And that's right. They'd slap their name, their codes, their favorite animals, gods and goddesses, and they'd release them. And so I want to stop right now, and you won't read this anywhere in your notes. When Jesus walked the earth, and way before he walked the earth, the Israelites for centuries, the Jewish, the Hebrews, the nation of Israel, lived with 3 sets of coinage. The widow's mite was Jewish, and a couple other coins. The shekels, they didn't get all the Greek coins collected, and so they would have the Greek coins, and they had equal value. The way they got them is they just waited for them to show up at the mint, and they didn't melt. They just didn't send out soldiers. We're collecting coins today that are Greek. They just didn't do that. And then you had the Roman coins coming off the press lickety-splick when the Romans took over. And so there were basically 3 currencies. That's why what they would do is they did not, if Israel had the widow's mite, the puta was Roman, it was the same weight. They would just call it another name and have different pictures on it, but it was the same weight and was probably a former mite that they'd melted down and they'd recast it with their stuff on it. So that's what they would tend to do, is just keep the same value. All right, you say, how in the world they sort that out? Well, let me ask you a question. How do you sort Canadian coins with American coins out? Let's see. They still have, they're in circulation. They're trying to collect them. But Canada had pennies, didn't they? Yeah. I have Canadian pennies. I still get them in my change. I still treat them as a penny. And I have an American penny. They're the same value. They're the same thing. They're pennies. They're pennies. They have a dime. Now you say, well, they got loonies and toonies. That they do. Okay? And I've seen some of them. I don't have them. But that's their $1 and their $2. Now all of a sudden, the shift of value of countries' currency does make a difference then. And banks will hold that up and give a different value. But they don't care about the coins. I get Canadian quarters, and I roll them and turn them into the bank. I find them. I get them in change. It's no big deal. We understand that. And so the Jews they understood that, and they just dealt with it. That's what they do. Because coins are recycled into another culture, finding ancient coins is really not rare. That sounds like an oxymoron. But you'd think that because they're taking the coins in and melting them down, etc., that they would become rare. The ones that they got, yes. But what were the Jews doing with their money and their coins? They hid them. They buried them. And they would bury them. They would get the big pottery things, and they would fill them with their wealth, and they would have hiding places. They'd just go out and hide this stuff. They didn't have metal detectors back then. They didn't have GPS. So they would just hide this stuff and hide it and hide it. And that's all that they could do with their wealth. And so that's why any given year, archaeologists are out in fields, or farmers are out in fields in Israel, and they're clunking on something and breaking it, and they open it up, and they find a big old pot full of coins. That's every year. There's several of those that happen. And so, look, here's what happens. They buried it, and so if the family is killed or taken as slaves or had to escape and could never return again, and they had a large box or a bag of coins or a pot of them, they'd hide them in the ground in the hope that I will return someday. I'll be able to come home, but most of the times they never did, and then they never could. And so what happened? They left their wealth behind. They just escaped with what they could carry. And that's why all these things are starting to show up, and we find all of these things. And the technology today is only making it more rampant, more quickly. It's revving it up because satellites can spot metal in the ground. And let's go dig here, let's go dig there. Okay, Jesus and coins. Jesus identified the three metals used for coins as money. He said in Matthew 10:9, take no gold or silver or copper or bronze in your belts. Jesus told us right there, he lived among money, he dealt in money, and he said, don't take any of that stuff with you. Don't mount up like you're going to go. If you're going to follow me and my disciple, you aren't going to check into Holiday Inn up in Decapolis. So put your money aside. Don't bring it. Give it away. And he said, what you carry in your belts. And they would have leather belts around themselves, around their tunics. And that's where they carry. We have the same thing today. We call them money belts. We could say, that's their money belt. Well, they did carry their money in there and their credit cards, but that's about it. So they did that. Since coins were produced by kings and rulers, the kings often had their image on them. And he said unto them, whose likeness inscription is this? They said to Jesus, Caesar's. Then he said to them, then give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they showed him a coin with Caesar's face on it. Jewish coins would use sunbursts or other symbols in place of the image of the ruler. It was idolatry to use an image on a coin or anything else. So I'm going to red light this. I better go to the other one here. Okay, I want to make a couple comments to you on this. This is a mite. This is a widow's mite, just so you know. Do you see the sunburst here? You see the sun in the middle and the rays go out from it? This appears on almost every mite. I haven't seen any that has not been the widow's mite. The most common thing they would put on the back would be the anchor. And you say, well, what Jewish significance has that? I don't know. I'm sorry, I wish I did, but I've looked and looked and looked. What does the anchor mean? What does the anchor mean? They have put, a few times, they put the Ark of the Covenant. And other times, I've seen a couple of things. I have 2 or 3 of these with me today. And I have a magnifying glass over there, but a couple of them are just as pure as can be. And you can see. Okay, now what doesn't look right here on this first one? Look at the whole coin and look at the stamp. What's wrong? It's off center. There were very few perfect coins made. In fact, if you were a coin collector back then, if you found one that's dead center on both sides, keep it. That's what would have intrinsic value because it was so rare. Because these things are poured and then they're stamped by basically either by the mold, but many times just by hand. You come along. They didn't have machines that went pink, 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 like that. Okay, the coins in the New Testament. The lepton is Greek or is Roman, but it is Hebrew or Israel. It is a mite, the widow's mite. It's the same coin.
Is that the smallest form?
Yes, it is. It is the smallest form of currency. You were just looking at one of those. And there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 of these coins, mites, which makes a farthing. Oops. There is a drachma. This is Roman. This is Roman. But in Luke 15, verses 8 and 9, either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose 1 piece, doth not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she find it. And when she's found it, she calls her friends and her neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me, for I found the piece which I've lost. It is a small coin about the size of a dime. It's silver. Okay? You can find one over there today on the table, I think. Okay, it's made out of silver. But it is not Hebrew, it's not Israel, it's not Jewish, it's Roman. The drachma is an unusual coin of Christ's time. The Roman denarius had long replaced the Seleucid Greek silver coins, and this was their equivalent. So remember what I told you? They just take their coins and keep the weight, meld them, and then put their stamp on them. And that's what had happened here. So these little silver coins, and when I looked at it, I said, man, this looks used. All these look used, and they're old. But I could see how they melted it down and would just misstamp again. And there's a Greek drachma. They would take, and the Romans would take it then and make it their drachma. And they put Pan on their gold and on their silver coins. That's their god Pan. Ugly looking thing. But he got to be on a coin, didn't he? It's been thought that perhaps the coin mentioned only in Luke 15:8 was a Cappadocian drachma bearing Titus's bust, since these coins have been found in Israel and were contemporary with Jesus' story. Okay, Tiberius was alive when Christ was, but he was in Rome. He was a general. He was running around doing other battles. He shows up. He ultimately becomes Caesar. And so while he's there, he visits Tyre when he's nearby and says, hey, make me up a coin. Make me up a series of coins. I'll smile, get the camera out. They'd have to sit there and somebody would have to draw a picture and then inscribe. Big process. And so it's thought that this coin was possibly one of those. The didrachma, all this is the prefix di. What's that usually? 2. That's right. It's a double, what then? It's a double drachma. That's right. It's just twice the size. Twice the value. Yeah. That's all it is. So like in Canada, you have a loonie and a toonie. Okay, the loonie's at $1, the toonie's at $2. It's twice the value. That's what you got here. Okay, the loonie has a loon on the coin, the bird. The loonie, the toonie was made up just to make it rhyme because the people thought the mint was silly in what they did, and they made up these names. So that's the history there. And when they came to Capernaum, they received tribute money to Peter and said, does your master pay tribute? He said, sure. And when he's come to the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what do you think, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children, of strangers? And he says, well, the Romans are taking it from us. We're the strangers, not their people. So this was that coin, the didrachma and the tetradrachma, which tetra, all of a sudden you have, it's bigger. It's bigger on a bigger size. Our references to silver coins from the city of Tyre used in the business of the temple. The staters were equal to shekels. So think staters and shekels. The 30 pieces of silver was a stater or a shekel that was cast or paid for Jesus and thrown down in the temple. And so these were equal to shekels, and because the Jews were forbidden to issue their own silver coins, They were forced to use the coins from this merchant city. This upset the Jews greatly. Do you remember, what did Jesus do early in his ministry? He did it later in ministry. 2 different visits, first visit and third visit to Jerusalem. He went up on the Temple Mount, and the Bible calls it he cleansed the temple. He didn't take out a hose and bleach. It was the money changers were there. And they had these coins. They were taking the Jewish coins out of circulation because Herod and the Roman officials said the only currency that exists in Jerusalem to pay the temple tax, to buy or sell anything, has got to have a Roman face on it. And that was idolatry to them because they didn't put pictures on coins. It was idolatry to do that. And so here is the idolatry going on, and they said it's totally wrong. And Jesus just got them out of there. They're a bunch of rats. Well, they all came back after he left, but he had made his point that what's important in life, what is real. The coins bore the image of, here's why, also, of Israel's old enemy or old god, Baal. Along with Herod had his series of them. And the money changers were on hand to render service, changing foreign currency into the Tyrian coins. The coins minted out of Tyre. Judas was paid with the 30 staters or with the 30 shekels. And I don't have this one. This one had Baal on it. And then there's the Tyre shekel or the stater or the tetradrachma. It's the shekel, and I'm backing up a little bit. It's the shekel of Tyre, but it was Herod pulled it in and had it minted in Jerusalem. It's called the shekel of Herod. That's what he looked like. It was made in the Jerusalem mint. And by the way, they dated these coins. And I don't know I'm going to have time for dating, but the coins had dates on them. And I got to watch my clock. I'm not going to finish today. I'm going to finish next week with this, and then we're going to do the mercy gate. I needed to tell you that followed up on this. Okay, but I'll have the coins that I have with me back again early. If you come into class early, I'll have the table up. I'll be there. If you don't get to it today, because I'm not going to finish. It was Herod's only silver coin. Did it in 18 BC before Christ. And he did it when this is when Herod completed his renovation. He didn't rebuild the temple. He renovated it. Made it really exquisite, a lot of gold into it and silver. And this coin became the official temple tax, his coin. And that's what the money changers are there doing. Taking all the other coins. If you're going to pay the temple tax from the Jews had to get the right coin, or you couldn't do it. You were breaking the law. So Herod the Great transferred the production from Tyre to Jerusalem. The most important in the New Testament, there are 4 stories all about these pieces of silver, these shekels, these staters. There was the temple tax, to pay the tax at the temple. The money traders had it. Jesus cast them out. That was their currency. When Jesus had to pay tax, he said, Peter, go fishing. They found a fish with a coin in its mouth. Guess what they found? That's the story. They found the shekel, and that took care of the tax. It was also Judas's 30 coins.
How'd that coin get in that fish's mouth?
That's a good question. The question was, how'd that coin get in that fish's mouth? That's Judas's 30 coins. Yeah, sorry, you had blanks there. My apology. There were quadrans, and I won't go into them. That's what they look like. Caesar Augustus had, that was his official coin. But this, all of a sudden, became a Roman mite. He saw the Jews had tens of thousands of these things, of their mites. And so Caesar Augustus gets this idea and says, well, if we're replacing everything, let's counter them and we'll run these off. And there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites, which makes a farthing. I'm going to move on quickly. An osaris, you're filling in words, aren't you? Not all of them? Okay. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 farthings, and not one of them is forgotten before God? The osaris is a farthing. That's actually the Brits, the King James people, that was their currency. They had that as one of their, and that's how they translated, and it should have been translated that. And there's Claudius Caesar. Was the imperial coin. Here's the story on the farthing. You have that. And then the denarius. Lots of use of this. It looked like this, Nero's picture on the back, a Roman soldier. Here is the dating. Okay, sometimes there's a sigma. They used Greek. Even the Romans, they used the Greek alphabet to signify the sigma. The S could mean 6 or 200. And I'll explain at another time, and I'll pick it up from there. I've had a lot of help with this. It's the most referenced coin in the Bible. It's like the penny. How were they made? Coins were made by pouring molten. They'd melt stuff down and they'd pour it into a mold. When cool, each blank flan would be punched in a set of metal dies that had the image of the front, the heads, and the reverse, the back, whatever they'd put on it. I'm going to show you the molds here. Some coins are poured in straps and would have to be cut apart from each other. Okay? Silver, not the silver eagle that's an official mint coin of the United States, which is a troy ounce today of silver. That you can go buy them in coin shops, and that's a real coin. But you can also go what are called silver rounds. They're closer to what the value of silver is. I'm talking American currency and value right now. You can buy them and you'll find Christmas trees on them, and John Wayne. The Franklin Mint used to put out all the states on little, those are simply called rounds or just flats or a strap coin. And so you can go buy silver, it's called get out of Dodge money. Okay, it really is. It's called get out of Dodge money. You buy these straps of silver, and they're not an ounce each. They're about 1/10 of an ounce. And so what you can do is you got this sheet, you can break them off, and if you got to get it out of town quickly, you just rake up a bunch of these or break them off, and if everything crashes, you've got little pieces of silver that you can start buying food for, gasoline, and get around. And they actually print them by the millions. And people have them. I don't. I'm not that bad yet. They're hoard coin. They're hoard metal. Because something bad could happen. Tragedy could hit. And you got to get out of Dodge real quick. That's why they're called get out of Dodge money. And that's what they would do. Okay, do you see? Here's a flan maker. Okay, this is used to smoothen out. We have these things. You can go to Home Depot and buy them. In fact, that's where this came from probably. But they would have that same tool, and that end, on the other side of that dimple, on the other side was a hole. And that's what they'd use, and they'd put that in, and then they'd turn that to smooth the coin out before they'd implant the face.
So that 20 millimeters close to around 3/4 of an inch.
Okay.
Because 25.4 millimeters is an inch.
I will believe you because I don't know. And that sounds right. Okay, here is the flan maker or the mold. Watch, do you see how they do it here? Here's the top. This has like the front of the coin. And what would this have? There would just be a bunch of patterns or one pattern of a coin. And you would pour the melt into here, and these would just hold the metal. Just be a little round thing, and it just smack. You pour the metal down in here from the right, like in there through the little things, and it'd just fill it. It'd fill the whole thing, and you'd imprint it. And then you wait for it to cool, or you cool it off, and then you take the thing off, smack it off, and then put that tool on it and smooth things out. There's the. Do you see the hole now on the front side? Okay. I know you're all going to Home Depot to buy one, aren't you? Then they'd also have stamps. Here at the Agrippa would have an official stamp. It's just like a notary public has a stamp. Then they'd engrave that. Engravers would make that the stamp and go for it. Okay, this is a good stopping point today, and I will finish. It won't take long to finish next week, but I want you to see today, this is Israel's currency today. If you go there, they have coins, and all these coins are called agoras. Wonder what agora means. It's actually Greek. They held it over. It's called market. An agora was the marketplace. It's where you went and weighed stuff and bought everything, and you did everything in the Bible. You went to the agora. You went to the mall. And that's where it all happened. And these are called mall coins. Marketplace coins. You carry the coins around just to, I want to buy this, I want to buy this, etc. That's what they do. And then their other currency, their currency base is a shekel. And here's 50 shekels, and here's 5 shekel bill with Einstein on it. Okay, when I was at the conversion counter yesterday at the mall, I asked them, she pulled out a $20, she pulled out a 20 shekel currency, and I said, how much is that? And she says, well, it's about 3 to 1. She says it's $6.33. I could buy it for that. I said, okay, if I bought that and took it to my class and showed it to them, and I brought it to you tomorrow, what do I get for it? And she said, $5.11. So I said, well, for $1, it would be good for show and tell, but I didn't do it. You're tough luck. You can go do. You can see this stuff on your own. Okay, here's what you get to look at today. You're going to look at a 78 to 170 a Trajan coin. Actually, it said when it put this was a commemorative coin. It said on the back, it reads the acquired Arabia rather than conquered. They're celebrating that when they went to war to take the Arabian area, they didn't have to fight. The Arabia just said, that's fine, come on in, we'll adopt to the culture. And so they honored that victory by putting that on there. I have a Greek Pontius Amissos, and on the front is the god Mars. I am not into idol worship, please. On the back is a sword, a sheath with the sun rays. Here's a widow's mite. I have that. You can look at that, and I have a couple other widow's mite. It might say a pruda, but there is this. And this one came, Alexander Jannaeus was a Hebrew priest, and what he did, he was in the temple treasury, and he got this idea, let's just mass market this stuff, and that's why widow's mites are everywhere. If you go to Silver Queen on East Bay, and this is where I get some of my coins, they have just asked for the ancient coin bin, and they'll just set it right out in front of you. You just piece right through it. Widow mites galore everywhere. And guess what? You can buy some of them for $5. And some of them you can buy for $100. I have a pruda. What's a pruda to Israel? It's a widow's mite. Okay, it's another mite. But they didn't make it. I have the silver shekel. And I have Ptolemy the First on the front. And on the back is that eagle. That's the Judas coin.
And you've got a security
Amen. And so I had to say, so I use dollar signs. You should say, he's so clever. So glad we had this treasure hunt today. Grab your shovels and metal detectors and let's go find some bagfuls. I will spend some time with you next week on dating. I'll put a couple dating things up there, let you see it real quick, and then we'll move on to the mercy gate. Let's pray, and then as I told you, come on over to the table. I'll have the lights on over there. If you don't want to do it today, we'll do it before class. Come out early. Even before church, I'll have it out, and you can stop by and take a look. Or after, I'll put the coins out after class. So, Lord, thank you so much for just a great class time. Thank you for your people. Lord, I pray that what we looked at today would impact us in some way, that we just wouldn't see money, we'd see real people. We'd see the struggle people had. They had trouble paying taxes, not just coming up with the money, but they had to just tough it out and bite their lip, and a whole lot more of God's people to take Herod coins to pay the tax when they just knew that that our God was insulted. Lord, I pray you just help us to apply things spiritually into our life. Might we not count our money, might we count our blessings that we have in Jesus. In his wonderful name I pray, amen.